Francois Barrault, Chairman of DigiWorld Institute. Welcome to FII Institute TV. I'd just like to start because you are here speaking on two panels. One is the geopolitics of AI, and the other is how can you catalyze Europe's tech sector to rival Silicon Valley. Just give us a sense, where is Europe today in tech versus Silicon Valley?
I think it's very difficult to compare Silicon Valley and Europe. By the way, I arrived in Silicon Valley in '98. I was one of the first French. And it was a shock for me, a good shock, by the way, because there was no boundaries. You know, in Europe, you have silos between communities and no porosity in the silos within countries. Here, everybody talks to everybody. I remember the very day I came, I was invited into a get-together. There was VCs, professors, entrepreneurs, and everybody was talking freely, chilling. And one of the chairmen told me, "Welcome to Silicon Valley, Francois. You are here to make money and have fun." I've never listened to this in Europe.
So the world of academia, the world of business and investment were mixing together.
Absolutely. And when you look at Stanford or MIT or other university, they're very integrated into the business. First of all, they raise so much money. They own dozens of billions of dollars. They help also entrepreneurs through venture. And it's very well organized. In Europe, you don't have this organization. It starts to cope with that, but it's more a Me Too things rather than into the DNA.
Let's start with the money then. Do you see whether there's the readily available risk capital in Europe to help companies truly scale? So not just to start off, but truly scale to become globally competitive businesses?
Well, it starts by education. In Europe, we are more risk adverse. Failure into the DNA of students is part of the journey. I remember when I went there, one of the investors told me, "Francois, have you failed?" Say, "Not yet." "Oh, sorry." In Europe, when you fail, it's a punishment. So it's a very different mentality. I remember also that I was saying this at the panel. My first day in Harvard, I was welcomed by the dean who told us, you're the best people of the world, you will own the world. And he said, as of now, the world will be your playground. So in 10 seconds, I moved from 90 degrees to 360 degrees. So at the very beginning, there is a kind of education where nothing is too big. Entrepreneurship, is part, of this country. It's not yet in Europe. But igniting Silicon Valley, that was the theme of the discussion yet, I don't think it's a good idea. I think in Europe we're different countries, 27 countries. And even countries you don't have, the EU, it was 28, but now it's 27. I live between three countries. In Belgium, you have three different languages. In France, you have lots of different communities. So it's very difficult to say, yes, there is one Europe. Where we can be very smart in Europe is how to use AI for the citizen. That's the theme of my conference in La Baule in end of June, Tech for Citizens. Are we going too far? Are we going too fast? Is it good for us, or is it just good for the pension fund who owns all the tech companies? So we try to put again the church in the middle of the village. It's a French expression, to make sure we don't go too fast and we don't let the people on the road.
Would you say that's characteristic of Europe? So AI is in its infancy, and in Europe we're already thinking about regulating it and putting brakes on it, whereas in the US they're thinking about how to make profit from it. So Europe's become head of the regulatory aspect, while the Americans are leading the charge on profits.
I'm sure you know the famous jokes that in the US they have the GAFAM. In Asia, they have the Batix, Baidu. In Europe, we have LGPD. So while other countries create values or create great companies, we regulate. Well, that's also something which is a problem, because we lost all the battles. You know, internet was created in the US without Europe. I was at the very beginning because I built in my early age the first internet world. Then we had the cloud. Now we have AI, and AI is not a new thing. You know, AI exists since 1953 with the Turing team. I do AI since 1982, by the way. So the first 40 years, my diploma was in my desk. The last 2 years have been very popular because ChatGPT has popularized, you know, the idea of AI. But ChatGPT is just a kind of cherry on the cake on what AI is. AI, in fact, is three things. You have hardware, you have transmission, and you have software. You remember the Moore's law invented by Intel, where you double every 18 months the power. Now, every 2 years, you multiply by 100 the power. So it's bigger in terms of power, smaller in terms of size and consumption. Then, when you look at transmission, you have mobile, you have fiber, and satellite. And satellite is exploding, mainly led by US and China, but there is a battle between those two countries. And then you have the software who manage all this. So AI, you know, it's really what we call an ecosystem. Ecosystem is not a bunch of people in the same room. Ecosystem is entities where if you take one out, you know, the system collapses. It's exactly when I discovered the world ecosystem was in Africa in a safari where you had all around the water at night, all the animals drinking. And the guy told me this is an ecosystem because if you take one out, the system collapses.
But it's an ecosystem where US and China have staked how they want to play. There's a lot of capital going into it. Countries like Saudi Arabia are getting a lot of investment, but also investing a lot into it. And you've got other countries like Singapore that are looking to be data hubs. Where does Europe fit into this narrative as far as how AI is going to develop and how competitive is Europe going to be?
You get a great example. I organized for the Prime Minister in Singapore all the system for citizens. His vision was fantastic. It was 2008, 17 years ago. I want to create a system around citizens, like what we call the 2.0, like your Apple or smartphone. You put your parameters and the system organized around yourself. So those countries, instead of the citizen go to the system, has done the opposite. Some countries like Eastern Europe, very happy to be in Albania because it's a very fast-growing country. They embark technology as an enabler to have a better life, and not to put rules or to. There is too much rule in Europe. That's why we have difficulty to raise money.
Would you say Europe is over-regulated when it comes to tech?
Yes, in some countries. By the way, Europe is an aggregation of 27 countries with different rules. In some countries, you can create a company in 2 hours. Some other, it takes 3 months. Europe is more a word, than a reality. We have euros, but the tax is different, education is different, the VAT is different, the tax on stock option is different. Some countries you pay upfront, some you don't pay. So it's not an homogeneous platform,
I'm just curious. I mean, you talk to prime ministers, you talk to government ministers. What can governments in Europe do to ignite the kind of technology revolution we're talking about?
One thing needs to be improved is to have long-term missions. In the US, you have a CTO, we're here for 5, 8 years, whatever you call that deliver a job. The life cycle of a minister of IT or AI is 18 months. 6 months to discover what is IT. 2 ministers told me, Francois, I'm great in AI. I have a ChatGPT account. Another one a few years ago said, Francois, I love technology because I have a Twitter account. Then 6 months to go on TV and 6 months to find another job. So the real job is 6 months. So I think we need a continuity. We need to have not politicians. We need to have specialists to drive a plan for 7, 10 years.
Let me give you for a second my experience as former Minister for Science and Technology in the UK, and now someone who invests in this. And the number of entrepreneurs in Europe who start businesses, some of them out of the great universities, and then the moment they are de-risked, go to the US
Of course.
for US capital to scale those businesses.
Yes.
So Europe is losing on two counts. It loses the talent, but it's also losing those businesses and what they can do. You said you'd invested in 200 companies. What can be done for Europe to have these companies start, grow, and become globally competitive in Europe?
Yeah. I think when you look at the success of companies in the US, many has been created in the labs of universities. So really to spend more time, more money for fundamental research. You know, during 5 years, I was teaching at MIT. We had a chair, and it was amazing how embedded are the investors, technologies, company like us, and even students to create things together. That's an ignite. When you go, I try to do the same in France, you know, with a big university I will not quote, and I say, okay, I'm going to give you 100K for 3 years, but I want you to do this and this and this. Say, no, I want to do what I want. Say, no, if I give you 100K per year, I want to have a return. So research, fundamental research, sometimes is not linked to reality. Now, when you create a company and you want to scale, you need capital, you know. And one of the reasons many of the entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, after POC, proof of concept, go to the US, is because they cannot raise significant capital to scale their business. You know, that's because the US is very well structured. It was very interesting what the PIF is doing, by the way. They raise a lot of money, a lot of fun, and they understood. They are very Anglo-Saxon, by the way. There is a great, you've seen President Trump and MBS, Czech MBS together. And now the UAE and also the Saudi are investing a lot, you know, in technology, putting a lot of money at every stage of
the company's life cycle.
Then it's not a critical size fund, but when I look at the quality of VC, you do not have enough industry people in it. You have professional bankers, or people looks, you say you're doing 100, you did 96, why? Versus helping people, entrepreneurs, to develop, you know, technology. A good example is in the B2B business. When you have a great idea and you want to plug your technology within a value chain that exists for 100 years, you know, planes or whatever, it's extremely difficult because you have liabilities, you have what we call the sigmas, availability of the product, and usually entrepreneurs do not realize that. So you need to have somebody at the table who is an industry, so it's a complementary of skills between capitals, skills, and mentorship, which is very well developed in the US, by the way.
My final question for you. We've talked a lot about how Europe could ignite its tech sector to rival Silicon Valley. What can Silicon Valley learn from Europe?
Lifestyle, enjoying a coffee in Paris or Roma. I think Silicon Valley can learn the sense of nuance. You know, the US is very binary: Democrats, Republicans, McDonald's, KFC. We have 365 cheese, you know, in Europe. So the sense of nuance, and also the fact that at the end of the day, we do all this for our kids, for humans. So maybe more balance the immediate profit with the sense of life. I'm not talking about spirituality or religion, but make sure that everything we do is good for people.
Thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure.